Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laurenz from Ginneken from the European Liberal Forum, the official think tank and political foundation of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, and therefore also we work closely together with the Renew Europe group in the European Parliament. Today we bring you a panel about LGBTiQ rights as human rights, because we will also look closer to the link. Throughout several media campaigns throughout Europe, we see narratives that actually try to divide LGBTiQ rights and LGBTiQ people as a separate group, trying to actually not look at them as not look at all the people as people, human beings, but trying to make an ideology out of that, an ideology that would threaten the European culture, that would threaten families, threaten children, and they're trying actually to criminalize people for being themselves. And during this, during these periods, we actually see also a radicalization on many occasions with violence and even murder, as we have witnessed this week in Slovakia. During this panel, we'll actually also look closer on the questions on how should the LGBTIQ community and their allies counter these kinds of narratives and tactics? What can we learn from best and worst practices? And why are LGBTIQ rights human rights, and why should we fight for these? But before we go to the panel, I would also like to invite Karen Melchior to the screen, who has provided us with a video. She is a member of the European Parliament for Renew Europe from Denmark. So now we can go to Karen.
Dear friends of Freedom Games, my name is Karen Melchior, and it's my pleasure to participate in the event, even if online. Many thanks to Olga and everyone in the organization team for making sure that I can be with you today. As a member of the European Parliament, I will share some worrying data provided by the European institutions on discrimination against the LGBTI community in Poland. The European Union Agency of Fundamental Rights show that in Poland, almost 60% of same-sex couples avoid holding hands in public for fear of being assaulted, threatened, or directly harassed. This is the double of the EU average. The increase of prejudice and intolerance against the LGBTI community in the last 5 years triples the EU standard. The same survey shows that this is due to a combination of a negative stance and discourse by political parties and negative changes in laws and policies. And the government is definitely not doing anything to combat it. We also can see that there is a reaction from the community and from the Polish society that goes against the Polish government. It was my pleasure when I was at the Pride 2 years ago to see, 1 year ago, to see that there was great support for Pride in Warsaw and that the community feels more accepted and tolerated by their close family and friends and neighbors. This goes against the discourse of the government and the political parties in the Polish parliament, and gives me hope for the future of tolerance and equal rights in Poland. In 2021, the European Commission launched an infringement procedure against Poland because of a lack of cooperation on its requests for information about the municipalities and regions having declared themselves LGBTI ideologue-free zones. Due to all of this, and especially in the light of the intense anti-LGBTIQ campaign led by PIS party, Poland got a poor mark on the equal treatment of various segments of the population by the organization Freedom House. Other organizations, such as Human Rights Watch, also have reported on this issue. But the European institutions are responding. Here in the European Parliament, we have long been calling for an infringement procedures to be launched against Poland. Moreover, we adopted a resolution that declares all of the European Union as an LGBTIQ freedom zone, where you can be free to be whoever you are and love who you love. And what is more important, as I said before, is that the Polish civil society is responding to public support for the LGBTI community and equal rights, including the same-sex civil partnerships, has risen in recent years. Indeed, initiatives like the Freedom Games, organized by the Liberty Foundation, are a precious bottom-up boost in this fight. So I thank you for having this, and I am so happy to help participate in the Freedom Games, just as I'm happy to have participated in recent years in 2 Prides in Warsaw. At the European institutions, we will keep on working to eradicate all kinds of discriminations, especially against the LGBTiQ community. But we count on your strength, your energy, and your love. Uściski, and see you again soon. Karen.
Thank you very much, Karen Melchior. So now we can start with the panel. And my first question actually would be towards also Slava Melnyk. He is the director of the campaign against homophobia. So actually, also like when it comes from civil society, what are actually the main arguments, strategies, and actions that you witness against equal rights for LGBTiQ people?
Right. I'll switch to Polish. Tak, będę po polsku odpowiadał. Więc
what we have seen for the last years, we hear the arguments that are mainly used by the law and justice activists, the current government that is trying to take away our rights. It is dictated by the political calculations, as we have just heard from Karen. Starting LGBT freedom zones was an example of a political game that was trying to frighten us as the civic society activists were supposed to be threatened and to cause an effect that would be frightening to people who live in these communities or work in these communities. It is also important in this context. Poland is ranked as the last country when it comes to the rights of the LGBT people. The only place where the registration provides them with rights, it's the rights in the workplace. So it is hard to talk about taking away the rights from us. We haven't had such rights. Some strategies are used by the government right now or by the extreme right wing. These strategies are focused not only against individuals and LGBTiQ people, they are also against the human rights. So referring to the human rights, I must say that we as individuals in Poland, we cannot count for any support, state support. And it is also hard to say about any rights at the times when the state of law simply doesn't work.
Well, and then actually we can continue to Krzysztof Śmiszek. He's a member of the Polish parliament, the same, for the New Left, Nowa Lewica. And well, what we have just heard here as well from Slava, how does this translate itself into the political fight that you're having within the parliament? How is it actually to be in the opposition at this point regarding LGBTIQ rights?
Dzień dobry Państwu. Bardzo
Thank you very much for the invitation. This is a very important discussion because we are at a very important moment in Poland, Europe, and in the world when we are discussing the human rights and the rights of LGBT plus. A while ago, we thought that homophobia is no longer fashionable, that being intolerant and hateful towards LGBT people is not trendy, and that politicians will not gain any advantages due to this. So we are now very disappointed. We thought we are on the right way, but all of a sudden we've discovered that in a big country of the European Union, or in many European states, the populist strategy of the right wing. This strategy includes disrespect and hatred. So this rhetoric is still trendy, and in my opinion, there is like a renaissance of this strategy. We can see a clash of two civilizations, the civilization of disrespect and respect. So all the time we are witnessing the battle of these two civilizations. From the Polish perspective, we can see that the period until 2015 was the period of stagnation. So LGBT people were receiving some promises that have not been kept, and the politicians were just opening the door a little bit for the LGBT community. So until 2015, Poland did not really introduce any regulations apart from the regulations mentioned by Slava, so the ban of discriminating in the workplace. It was actually introduced by the left-wing politicians. Before, the state did not consider LGBT community as the community that should be included in the political mainstream. In 2015, this is nothing new for Polish audience, but in 2015, homophobia, transphobia, and disrespect became the key elements of the strategy of the government. So it's not just that this door is closed, that they pretend. Hatred has become an officially used element. You are asking me about the situation in the Polish parliament. Well, homophobia and transphobia is all the time present in the speaker's box in the Polish parliament. It's also disseminated through the Polish public media. It's disgusting, and it results in very specific consequences. There are lots of tragic stories we have all heard of, which we hear on daily basis. On the other hand, in this chaos, in this homophobic hell, there are also beautiful stories that have been developed by the civic society. The civic society has decided the rights of LGBT plus people as an imminent element of the fight for democracy. It's a very symbolical situation for me when in 2015 we had huge protests, and also in 2015 to defend the constitutional tribunal, to defend courts, Polish courts, and I remember the activists. I used to be an activist then because I started being a politician in 2019. So I remember when LGBT activists were coming to the protest and they were bringing rainbow flags. So at the very beginning, when the rule of law was destroyed, they were asked to leave the protests because they were saying that because they were told that it was the fight for the Polish constitution. But very quickly it was understood that their involvement was necessary. So those who didn't want previously to see the rainbow flags, they very quickly understood that they cannot separate all the aspects of the fight for independence. You cannot fight for free courts if you express homophobia. You cannot fight for LGBT rights if you do not fight for free courts, for the rule of law, for independent high court. The human rights are also the rights of the LGBT people. So all these different circles, which maybe before 2015 didn't have close collaboration, they understood that they have to combine their efforts. So on the one hand, there is so much homophobia. We hear about difficult situation of young people of these communities. But on the other hand, now nobody is brave enough to say that if you want to fight for democracy, you have to fight for LGBT
We'll actually come back
rights.
to the linkage between all the different activist groups and all the different rights that actually come by together to with a fight for freedom and the fight for your rights. And actually, I'm going to return very quickly also to my first question, also towards Anna Wiatrowska. She's like a well-known trainer, an influencer, also on social media, and she's also the founder of Queerowy Feminism on Instagram, also a profile really worth checking out for the public. And also like towards you, when you're actually looking to it as an influencer, how do you actually see the struggle happening now? Like, do you also feel like the strategies to really push against LGBTiQ people, do you feel those on social media as well? And what are the recurring strategies you see at this moment?
Dla mnie, tak jeszcze nawiązując do tego, co już zostało
I would just like to refer to something that has already been said. It's important initially to say that why after 2015 this homophobic narrative has worked. If the society is not homophobic, it wouldn't work. So it worked because it found its audience, target audience. I was born in 1995. Now I am 26, I am young, and when I was a pupil in Polish school, I have never spoken about about sexuality and other things of this type. I didn't know that these themes have existed. I knew they existed in general, but I didn't have the experience that actually I could be one of them. So to me, it's very important to stress it that in 2015 this narration did work because we didn't have this discourse before. We didn't talk that being homophobic is no good. That we didn't know that it could translate, it could affect the lives of millions of Poles. When it comes to social media and what happened in the last few years, a lot has been happening. And these are mainly young people who are activists in this sphere. The feature that is very special when I compare Polish social media to German or American social media, and when I make these comparisons, I can see that in Poland we very quickly became radical. In a sense that the protests which started in 2016, women's strike and other protests, the Rainbow Night in 2020, all these protests made the Polish society as the society that quickly learned how to talk about LGBT rights, human rights, so on and so forth. And in a way, we were not asking, we were not requesting, we were demanding. So, to me, it's one of the most revolutionary things that took place. Everything else that was before was too kind, too polite. So no breakthrough changes took place. And now, in the past few years, we have noticed that we are witnessing events that are witnessed by all citizens of Poland. So something incredible happened. So if we take the long-term perspective, it will actually take us to the real changes. I am from the city of Białystok, so I can actually experience that the way people speak about LGBT group, they speak differently. So, for example, they don't ask me, where is your boyfriend, girlfriend? So this is a major change. It just shows that a specific, certain area is not invisible. It does not remain in this sphere nobody wants to talk about. But this is present in the daily interactions, and to me this is a revolutionary change.
As well. Well, actually, continue what was just said, because as you said, back in the day, I grew up in Belgium myself, and I remember when I was in elementary school, we did not hear anything also about, about gay relationships, about lesbian relationships. It was just a non-existent topic, especially in the Catholic schools where I went to. And we never were actually really taught about, also about human rights. Like, those were notions that we didn't really know back in elementary school. We were aware of some forms of discrimination. We were aware of some forms of violence within society, but maybe also for the rest of the public, because if you're politically active, it is, you know why, why violence against LGBTiQ people, etc., are infringe, against also like human rights. So when actually Slava, if we actually also look at what we see today here in Poland, or what we see with the LGBTI free zones, as they call them, how exactly are those elements violating the human rights of LGBTIQ people? What human rights are being violated against?
No, generalnie najprościej byłoby
Well,
na to...
generally speaking, we could answer that just the very fact of creation of such zones, LGBTIQ free or ideology free zones, or family friendly zones, as they are sometimes called. So it's really hard to mention any specific rights that people are deprived of, but the very fact of their existence is unacceptable. Even if the infringement procedure is initiated not because human rights in specific areas are violated, because Poland doesn't want to collaborate with the European Union and explain what these zones really do mean, what they involve, and the fact that courts do not do anything about the decisions. It's only a political game, actually, but referring to the change in the civic society and in young people, I will definitely agree. We have entered a new period of activism. 2015, several years ago, we had several strong organizations fighting for LGBTIQ people's rights, and now we have plenty of such organizations. In 2012-2013, in 4 cities in Poland, we had equal rights parades. Now we have them every weekend in 2 or 3 places. Every local group has its strategy to involve in the activism. Young people take more radical forms of activism because they are tired of this situation, and they are tired of explaining constantly what rights they have and why it is important to perceive the rights of LGBTIQ people as human rights. We, young, older people, senior people, should not be discriminated or subject to violence because of who we are. We should have the opportunity to get married abroad or in Poland. These are the things that should not be discussed at all.
Also what we see today in the debates, because how they infringe the human rights, because also a little bit maybe to paraphrase Ralph Dahrendorf, a German sociologist, he actually also always argued that when you alienate, for example, your sexual rights, your rights of love, etc., from your citizen rights, that you actually also create a space and a field for polarization, for the right to fill in, and to actually start to attack certain points. Shouldn't we actually be talking more about indeed about human rights and as indeed as an as a total package, as you already have touched upon, Krzysztof? Could you maybe elaborate a little on that? What should our strategy further be to really make sure and to really bring out that it's a total package and not just a certain group of rights for a certain group of people?
No, z pewnością jest tak, że mamy do czynienia
Well, definitely, this is a kind of discourse on the place of LGBTIQ people's rights in the entire package of rights. The discussion was initiated by feminists in the 1970s. The discussion has been ongoing ever since, whether female rights are the rights of women and not a part of broader human rights, or perhaps we should bring these two streams together. The same applies to LGBTIQ people's freedoms. Should we stick to this narrative of identity of the group, or perhaps include our, because I belong to LGBTIQ society, should include our rights and responsibilities into the broader group of human rights? I do not have the answer to your question. There are different strategies that work in a different way. The only thing I know, based on my experience and observing what has been happening in Poland and in other countries, I can say that first and foremost, visibility of LGBTIQ society community matters, and then we can consider whether we fight for LGBTIQ people's rights or in a broader sense of civic rights. What we deal with now, and I do agree with Ania, who represents the region of Białystok. I represent the region of Podkarpacie, so I absolutely know what you have to face when you are a young person growing up and discovering yourself. First, we are invisible. First, everybody remains silent about us. Even if we do not face hatred, we as young LGBTIQ people are invisible and surrounded by silence. If we make a step forward and talk about the strategy of fighting for our basic rights, the freedom of association, the freedom of assembly, the possibility to enter into relationships approved by the state, it seems we need to reach a critical mass of visibility. For many years, I was frustrated as LGBTIQ and human rights defender that we were taking all possible efforts before 2015, and the number of people supporting the basic postulates of LGBTI community was quite low. I remember my joy and enthusiasm in 2003 and 2004, 20 years ago, when the first draft act on partnership relations occurred, and it was approved by the Polish Senate. 20 years ago, Polish Senate adopted the act on partner relationships. Where are we today? 200 years backwards. The problem was that the progressive parliament suggested something which was frustrating from the point of view of activists, that the society was not ready for, and politicians were not able to prepare the grounds for the society to accept it. According to surveys, 16% accepted or supported it. 16% of Poles. Nowadays, a similar act, not about equality in marriage, but about partner relationships, is supported by 60% of the society. It shows that we succeeded in one thing. It's still frustrating because activists and human rights defenders want everything here, now, and immediately, which is a good strategy. It took 20 years to reach the critical mass of visibility. What Slava has just mentioned is extremely significant. The visibility is visible not only in the Warsaw Parade or Łódź Parade with a huge number of participants, but it's also Milic near Wrocław, with a population of 10,000 people. For the first time in its history, there was a parade consisting of 400 people, and it was the parade of equal rights. And this is now more important than the fear, which in 2002 and 2003, when the parades were organized in Warsaw, I didn't have the courage to participate in it. I was walking along the pavement as a neutral passerby. It shows we are in a completely different place now. From the political point of view, from legislative point of view, we are far behind the rest of the world. But Polish society is now ready to have a gay neighbor, a lesbian physician, or a transsexual politician. Society is no longer a problem, as Anya mentioned. Politicians are a problem because they are more conservative. They sit in the parliament and block everything that the society is ready for and that the society expects.
One of the most important topics that you touched upon is indeed that point of visibility. Of repetition, visibility. And Anna, what should the next steps actually be when it comes towards visibility? Like, I think if we actually watch at the past years, that we already see many changes. Also because streaming platforms as Netflix, for example, that actually normalize same-sex relationships, that normalize also people in transition, that normalize actually also different forms of queerness. Like looking actually also from a point of action. What actions should be taken now from civil society, and also from actually the people here today in the hall as well? What can they do to make this cause more visible, like on social media and also in daily life, for example? Like for this question for Anna.
Tak się zastanawiam.
I'm just wondering, the first thing that always comes to my mind when it comes to what we can do is not to be afraid of some radical actions. Even if they scare us, we should approach them with curiosity and not reject them. In my opinion, this is something we can do. It helps us understand and see the potential of the non-standard, non-obvious issues. Perhaps now we think they are too much, but but we can become their part. We should talk about them, we should discuss them. We should simply try to become a part of the radical change. We should listen to young people. From my perspective, when it comes to LGBTiQ people's rights, young people in Poland did the most. They triggered massive change. They did non-standard, non-obvious things. And within no time, owing to them, we started discussing queer and LGBTiQ. So I would say believe in a radical approach and give it a chance, offer trust. I know if it's difficult, approach it with curiosity and listen to young people. Give them a chance and the credit of trust, because they know what they do.
When we look at the current fight that is happening, it is also because, as you rightfully said, because of the young people, because of the youth who are standing up for their rights. And actually, Krzysztof, if we look at this, indeed, as you have pointed out yourself, with the older generation of politics that are having like this conservative backlash, if the youth would keep on the hard work they're doing today for the civil rights they have, demanding for the rights to love who people want to love. Do you think this problem would be solved between this and, let's say, 25 years here in Central Europe?
Ja wierzę głęboko, że zmiana
I believe that the change will come in a shorter period than 25 years. However, looking at how long it took to the Polish LGBTiQ to enter the mainstream of the public debate about democracy and about where we are as the state, we can have certain doubts whether it's going to come in short time. I do believe that it's not possible to force millions of people back into their comfort zone, into the wardrobe. I don't want to talk to conservative. The dream of every person who is a homophobe and who hates other people is to push all these people back into the wardrobe who came out, who made the biggest effort in their lives. Homophobes and those who hate don't know one thing. Once you make a coming out, you never want to come back to this wardrobe which you left. You want to breathe the fresh air. You want to breathe with freedom. Consequently, we gain respect for our decisions and we become more self-confident. It's easier to play with fear and to manipulate fear if we know that the people whom we disregard are afraid to talk about them. But once they make coming out, once they regain their dignity and trust in their own value, such efforts of all homophobes will go pear-shaped. I am absolutely convinced that all these efforts done by those who established LGBTiQ organizations at the end of 1990s, a bit of history, but those who fell victim of hyacinth action and those who are fighting for it with the right-wing party to include lack of discrimination because of sexual orientation in the constitution, and they failed because of the strong position of the church. Those who established organizations at the beginning of 2000 and these brilliant young people who don't talk about any compromises, who go full steam and do things that are considered radical, form the critical mass I mentioned before. The request for change or the effect of the request of change will come within a shorter period of time than 25 years. We had to reprocess our history. We became a part of transformations which were a part of a major social transformation. I am fully convinced that it's not possible for both young and older people fighting for their dignity and freedom to convince that they need to wait 25 more years to become humans in the light of law, to be treated equally by their state. It is not about any special privileges. Special privileges for LGBTIQ would be if they demanded not paying taxes. But LGBTIQ only want to be treated as humans, as regular people, regular citizens who have their freedoms and responsibilities. I am convinced that this change is at hand. These are not dozens of years, but it's only a few years away from the moment when the outbreak of freedom, the outbreak of respect and understanding for LGBTIQ dignity to happen. We are not different than Slovenians or Croatians who accept single-sex marriages. We are not different than Hungarians who have partnership relations. We are no different, but there are also countries like Bulgaria, Lithuania, Latvia and Romania, who want to push these people back to their wardrobes from which they came out, who disregard LGBTIQ people. What we succeeded in throughout the last 20 years is that the Polish society knows we exist, that currently hundreds, thousands, millions of LGBTIQ made coming out and they want to come back to their wardrobes.
Share this feel of optimism that we have heard here, because if we indeed keep on the radicalism, and people would not be afraid of coming out for the rights, and who are coming out of the closets don't want to be pushed back in. Do you also see, do you also feel this kind of optimism that's actually just a matter of a few years before this explosion of of liberty, of freedom and human rights will come to Poland as well, and maybe also to the rest of the region and of the countries that were just called, that are also trying to push people back into the closets? Do you feel also this optimism?
Zdecydowanie tak. I też się zgadzam, że to nie
Definitely yes, and I don't think it's a matter of decades or it will happen in weeks or months, years. We can see that these changes take place very quickly. There are countries where these changes were taking place very slowly. So if we use an example of a small Catholic Malta, they've made a gigantic step 10 years ago. It was a society where single-sex marriages could not occur, and then the reform was introduced. And in Poland, it's the reverse tendency. Krzysztof mentioned some statistical data. He mentioned the number of people who use different equality-related solutions. So in Poland, we have this acceptance, but we need this last element, so we need the change in policies. So I do agree what we have just heard. Visibility is very important, but it is also important that LGBT communities fight for the faith. We know that there are some people in the Polish parliament who are LGBT people, so it shows that we are responsible. We feel completely accountable for this. We could have more LGBT representatives in the Polish parliament. So when the legislation is adopted, they should be there, but they should also work in the local municipalities. In our campaign, we have been working a lot with activists who work in the LGBT-free zones. We know that they leave this cabinet, this closet, and they are taking measures in their small fatherlands to counteract the LGBT-free zones. So we can see that the social change has already taken place, and we are just missing one piece of the puzzle.
Let's also look at the broader level, towards Europe. How can actually other Europeans, and I'm not just talking about politics, but also people, how could they actually help to accelerate the process and to actually give that final push, so that we can actually also help them to establish this kind of equality also in Poland? How can the rest of Europe help with this?
Well, the EU is doing a lot when it implements different equality-based relations in Poland, and it also counteracts all these bad things that are taking place. So there's a multi-year strategy adopted by the EU. If not the strategy, we will still have this problem of the LGBT-free zones and these laws that are against us. So the union helps us to impact the politicians both at the central, regional and local level, and of course EU MPs are helping a lot.
Krzysztof, so what could we actually do throughout Europe, to help Poland with the struggle?
No, przede wszystkim nie bać się mówić o
First
tym,
of
że jest
all, you shouldn't be afraid that we are a part of Europe, that we are a country in Europe, and we shouldn't be afraid of the solutions adopted by the EU. Slava was talking about some pressures. These pressures are very important because when we feel we are isolated here in Poland, and then we feel that it's only up to us. I mean, the people who care for human rights. So we think that we are single-handed, and then we receive support of the EU. Good example. So if our government is not convinced by us, maybe the funding-related arguments maybe are meaningful. So some municipalities that adopted resolutions against LGBT, actually they lost EU funding to deliver municipal projects. Then Zbigniew Ziobro, the prosecutor general, actually gave some funding to reimburse such municipalities, but we can see that that next municipalities and districts actually cancel such resolutions. We know that there was a counter-resolution adopted by the EU, and the EU has decided that the EU is the zone which treats equally LGBT people. I also suggested such a resolution in Poland, but unfortunately it was not published. The government, the majority, actually decided to get rid of my proposal, but we have to maintain the issue. We cannot win all the cases. European Commission, EU bodies are watching us and communicate the message that if a country is homophobic, if it's persecuting its citizens, no money will be awarded to such countries, because this is what we consented to when we joined the EU. EU is the values, it's not just the money. So if you want to be a part of the European project, take the money, but observe
if you don't want to listen, then you feel the consequences. If you want to cooperate and you want to become also part of the values that we all want to share within the European Union, then we can have a great and prosperous future together. And then maybe my last question, and then I'll open the floor as well for some questions from the audience. And also, Anna, if you could maybe give one message or one call for action towards also European audiences, on how we can also help from activistic sides, from influence, from social media, from from bottom up. What can we do? One call for action that you would like to see from the rest of Europe to help the cause here in Poland.
Dostaję zawsze najtrudniejsze pytania, mam wrażenie.
Under the impression that I always receive the most difficult questions. So when I'm thinking of the bottom-up actions at the European scale, I'm thinking of solidarity, expressing gestures of solidarity. You can do it through social media, you can do it differently. But please express your support, talk about this, communicate it loud. When I'm thinking about this, I mainly think of the women's strike. So when it was taking place in Poland, I thought there were lots of expressions of solidarity from all over the world. Solidarity with the Polish activists. I read many books that were published after 2016. And in their introductions, they were referring to our protests and to the actions taken by Poles. It's a great support. It motivates us. People start seeing us. They admire us. And I think that such gestures of solidarity are very helpful, very important to queer society in Poland.
Excellent answer. Solidarity, and actually indeed seeing the battle that is being fought here, because in the end it's not just a fight for freedom, liberties here in Poland, it's for all of Europe. So I would already thank the panel very much. And then I would open the floor for questions. I see already one question here in the front. Please do state your name first, and then of course also as a general remark, a question starts with a capital letter and ends with a question mark.
Dzień dobry Państwu, witam serdecznie.
Thank you for the great panel, the Federation of Polish NGOs. I would like to refer to what you have been saying about values, that you said that EU is taking care of its value, and no money will go to the country which discriminates, that does not observe the values. And there is also one condition to receive the funding, is that these rules are not violated. The question: what did you have to face as the campaign against homophobia? Apart from the NGOs that fight for some rights, there are also some governmental organizations that state that they also have some rights, and their access to information would be infringed. So, for example, minister invites some organizations to the committee which monitors implementations of the reconstruction fund. So probably we will not be members of this committee. Probably the governmental organizations that mainly want to support the government will be the members.
Another question in the back. Two questions in the back. We'll take both of them, and then we'll go to a coordinator to answer from the speakers.
Dziękuję. Dominika Łysień.
Dominika Łysień. Two anecdotes. I was honored. I had a placement in the Director General for Regional Policy in the European Commission, and I took part in the debates, discussions with Polish authorities when they were endorsing and drafting agreement on partnership, and the Polish partner in the Commission, in the European Commission, really wanted to generate pressure for the Polish government to provide the funding to organizations as yours. I do admire the members of this committee. They really want to help us. And the second story, my mom is a teacher, and she delivers the family, the preparation for family life, and Minister Czarnek doesn't like this subject. And one of the lessons for 14-year-old, she had a discussion on family, children, values, and one of the girls said, I don't want to have a husband, I want to have a wife. So my mom was waiting whether there will be some opinions from her colleagues, whether my mom will have to intervene. And the children didn't react. So I hope that it's not the only situation in this school. I hope that there is such an attitude, and it is well-rooted attitude. So children know about equal rights. So my mom could see that the children's for the children it was quite normal to talk about a girl wanting to have a wife.
Indeed, a very hopeful sign. And then we have the last question there. To ask to keep it short and focused, because I have a red timer going up here, and we have to keep watch on the time.
Okay. Marcel Stępniak Góra, ja chciałem.
I would like to observe. I would like to introduce to my question. This is a very inspiring panel. In the meantime, I have received a picture. I will read. It's a picture of a poster from Lublin. So during our conference, it's about LGBT, what they want to teach children. 14, masturbation. 9-year-old to agree to have sex. 6-year-old is that they have right to experience orgasm. So I do hope that there will be equal rights and that this situation will improve. There are rights, but on the other hand, people want to live in the utopia. People want to have rights, but still some people will not respect these rights. So we should disseminate, we should raise the awareness. So how can we influence? I don't want to say to fight such prejudices, because fight is a difficult, it's a hard word. So how to open such people's minds to make sure that we all live in this utopia, proverbial utopia.
Ernst would like to answer first to both questions. Okay, Krzysztof? Yeah.
To ja pierwszy.
The first question, I think we are dealing with the situation where the government is trying to develop its alternative civic society. And we have been facing it since 2015. There are organizations that are set up very quickly, they have no experience, no resources, and all of a sudden they receive millions of zlotys to deliver their activities. It's not a part of the healthy civic society. They are just agents of the government. And we, the politicians and the civic society, we need to inform the Commission, we need to signal, warn the European Commission and other bodies that we have agents, government agents in these committees. It's nothing new. This is how Law and Justice Party operates. All authoritarian governments work in this way. They want to become credible. How can you be credible? You have your own media and your own organizations that support the governmental policy. So we have to be present, we have to alarm, we have to warn, signal to all the bodies. It works very well in the European Parliament, the Council of Europe. I'm a representative of the Polish Sejm Parliament in the European Commission, and very often I see those who pretend that they represent NGOs, and I also see those who I know that they fight for human rights, and they've been doing it for years. Secondly, how to do this? Somebody was asking how to achieve this, that people will start understanding. These examples of public people, artists, politicians, social activists, people who influence reality. We can witness it to a greater extent. Many public people talk about their lives and about their identities. They are not afraid. So it's easy to fight with a cliche, lesbian or gay, and say that he or she is a threat to our children. But it's more difficult to fight against the real person who goes to a TV station, takes part in the interview with an extreme righty, with the luggage of hatred and stereotypes. So, when there is the confrontation with the real human being, it's much more difficult. I would like to tell you about myself. It's not easy for me to go to these TV programs, take part in interviews with men. Usually these are men who have homophobias. They are full of homophobia's venom. So on internet, you know, they are very brave to write things. So when they are in the parliament, they say disgusting things. But when this person comes to the studio, I sit next to him. It's harder for him to convince the society that someone like me has Polish children for breakfast. So in my opinion, we need more public people, artists, politicians, representing different layers who will be able to tell their own story, to say who they are, show their accomplishments, and who will be able to overcome these walls of hatred built by the
want to comment on this,
right-wing
or-
Tak, ja też bym chciała na to
I would like to add something to this last question. Discrimination will not disappear. Even when the legislation is different, there will be single-sex marriages will be legal. Discrimination will remain. People will often express different attitudes towards LGBT communities. So historically speaking, I would like to tell you what has been done in terms of different projects. Stop rubbish. At the beginning of our activities, we developed a website. So we fragmented all this rubbish they are writing, that 4-year-old child has orgasm and has the right to referring to World Health Organization. So we analyzed it and we showed why this information is rubbish, and it didn't work. So when we were taking these posters in our vans, they physically were opposed. Now in Poland, there are different meetings. Young people have to go to the court. So if young people stop such vans, they have to go to the court. So what we can do, we can go in front of the court to protest. And I would like to highlight this. This is an action we can do.
Maybe even from my side, coming from Belgium myself, because Belgium is being also on the Rainbow Index is one of the better countries when it comes to equal rights, when it comes to freedom for LGBTiQ people. But even there, we see those voices. Even there, we see on social media populists and people actually making those remarks and trying to discredit people. And it will always be a fight, because it's not that you only have the law behind you, that therefore you have society supporting this. So it will be a fight, like it will be a fight today. But we always have to remain fighting for freedom, because the price of liberty is internal vigilance. And on this final note, I would like to thank you all very much. And now I can switch to my little, to the basic Polish that I do know. Bym chciał podziękować wszystkich panelistów tutaj.
I would like to thank all the panelists. Thank you very much. Krzysztof Śmiszek, Slava Melnyk, Anna Wiatrowska. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of Freedom Games. Goodbye.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ihre Ausreise
Atlas Network is, as the name suggests, a network, and it's global. We work all around the world. We're based in the U.S. We have about 159 partners in the United States right now, and the bulk of our partners are outside, nearly 500 in total.
Atlas Network, it connects people from all over the world, defending the idea of human dignity, defending human rights and personal liberties.
Atlas Network is focusing on, I think, the most important and moral cause in the entire world.
We partner with local innovators, local leaders who understand conditions on the ground in communities facing real challenges. We look at the people from the worldwide freedom movement that are passionate, are ready to make a difference, understand local conditions, and we invest in them.
At Atlas Network, we unleash individual ingenuity to enrich humanity.
The United States does not have a lock on the idea of freedom and liberty. Those ideas are beyond borders.
One of the main goals of Atlas Network is to eradicate poverty around the world, and we do that by investing millions of dollars in our partners' work every year.
Historically, wealthy nations around the world have tried to help low-income countries develop. The way we've been doing it traditionally has not really been working. So there's a movement to do development differently, and that means we need to step back as outsiders and rethink the role that we're playing in helping people in low-income countries achieve their dreams.
We want to make the world a better place. We want to make the world a freer world.
All of us want to leave a legacy and be part of something big to make a better world. This is exactly the work of Atlas Network.
With our growing number of hundreds of successful partners, we're stronger than ever.
Changing the world.
Changing the world.
Changing the world
starts together with us.